Hi, welcome to our first edition of this year's Blues Talk, where again, John, Dave and myself are going to look back over the three games over the Christmas period and look forward to our game against Castle Hinding Cup at the weekend. So boys, we had two victories and a loss in our three matches over Christmas. Unfortunately beaten by Edinburgh, but pulled it out of the bag against Ulster, and obviously a very close win against Connacht at the weekend.
Yeah, you would never have predicted those three results, really, would you? If you'd have said which one you were going to lose, you wouldn't have said Edinburgh. But yeah, that was a bit of a forgettable match. I think, actually, did we play Edinburgh? I've forgotten it already. No, it was a fairly bad performance, in fairness, and very wet pitch, very damp, heavy on the legs. You know, it was never going to be a sensationally watchable game of rugby, but we got out of there with a losing bonus point, which is a terrible thing to have to say about a game against Edinburgh, but you know, it might not be the worst thing in the world considering we won the two others.
Yeah, there were three games, but I mean, there was, for me, a concerning thread that ran through all three of them was a certain amount of tactical, whether it was tactical or not, carelessness with the ball, in terms of retaining it and what we did when we had it. All three games. Now we leave the Edinburgh game aside because conditions did play a major factor in it, but we were very careless with the ball, and our kicking is very, very poor at the moment. I mean, against both Ulster and against Edinburgh or against Connacht, we kicked a huge amount of ball against back threes that weren't having too many problems with it, and we weren't really challenging for it. And then when we had the ball, we were careless in possession as well. A number of times against Ulster in particular, we got up into the 22, nearly into the red zone indeed, and we were turned over. And you know, you're thinking, oh, what's going on there? And we were just careless with the ball. We were untidy with our work at the ruck. I mean, and it is concerning because you're coming into a team. We're coming up to play Castra now, who have strengths and weaknesses, but one of their strengths is they're a bloody good rucking side. So it's something to be concerned about, and it's. You know, it's something that's reared its head, you know, maybe once too often this season, this carelessness towards possession.
Well, when we talk about more detail of the Connacht game, but I just thought the amount of ball that we kicked away, must have kicked 70% of possession. It's okay to kick the ball away, but we were kicking it 15 metres too far. We just not giving our
too long
chasers
and not
any
high
chance.
enough was the real problem. It was obviously a tactic in both games. To be honest, in the Connacht game, I was thinking, I know they always come out the week before the Heineken Cup and they never show any backs moves, and they just they want the team to come at them to test their defence. We've seen that a few times under Schmidt, and I was just wondering, was that what they were at? Is that why they were kicking the ball away so much, to get Connacht to run back at them? Because, like you say, they were kicking it too high, or not high enough, and too long. So as nobody had a chance of, you know, if they'd have kicked it 10 yards less. 10 yards nearer and 20 yards higher, he would have given the guys like Carney a time to get up and challenge for the ball. He didn't really get an opportunity to, like, Leader had a very good game for such a young guy.
Because no one was
and
challenging him.
back there as well, because he was
nobody was close. And I mean, just to go back to what you said about not wanting to show our hand in the way Joe Schmidt used to do it. Joe Schmidt used to not show our hand by simply keeping the ball and playing 1 out, 2 out, 3 out rugby without conceding possession so carelessly, so recklessly. Because, you know, Connacht mightn't have much, but you know, you give Fionn Carr 10 yards and he is able to beat a player, and that's, you know, himself. We saw a Leader play in the under-20s 2 years ago, and he was an excellent player running the ball back, and he was very good under the high ball. So we were kind of, once it's patently obvious after 10 or 15 minutes that this tactic was not going to work. So we kept doing it.
Yeah, well, I my optimistic belief is that you know, that's what they were at. They were keeping their powder dry, or maybe even, you know, their back. They didn't want our backs running into contact so much. And you were saying about retaining the ball in the forwards. Again, you want a hard enough game in the forwards, but you don't want it too. You don't want a slogfest, so you'll be knackered the following week. You want a nice workout that's just timed, you know.
But if you're talking about, like, giving them an opportunity to run at them, they certainly did for Fionn Carr's try, and it was very poor. Like, I think it was O'Driscoll rushed up. He created a huge gap, and Henshaw ran through.
Not only did he rush up, he rushed up on Darcy's player, I think, as well. Like, didn't even go for the right guy.
And he's done that a couple of times this season, actually. Not that you want to be too critical
Well,
of the great man.
I've noticed that, and I think the reason why that is that there's still not mistrust, but discomfort and unfamiliarity about the defensive system they're using. You see players do that in like at the beginning of the season. That was the problem we were having. Like, say for example, when against Clonethy, when we started out against Clonethy, there were dog legs in our defence all the time, and until the players played themselves into it and got used to the system. Maybe because O'Driscoll hasn't played all that much, he's still not familiar with it. I don't know. It was a very poor performance.
You saw him playing Samoa though as well. Was it Samoa or Australia?
Australia.
It was Australia, sorry. Where he did the same kind of a thing, you know, he rushed up the wrong time.
You should be familiar with that system.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, who knows?
Yeah. Well, why don't we just look at the try that Murphy got against Ulster?
Yeah.
It was a lovely break by
Fitz, wasn't it?
Fitz, yeah, up the wing.
Who was missed, I think, against against Connacht.
He did it well, in fact.
His quick feet and his intelligence were missed.
Beautiful little offload. And of course Murphy, he had a bit to do. He still had two players to beat, and beat them he did.
And he set himself nicely. He set his body weight in the right way to be able to shrug off the challenges. I mean, it was good play from him.
2 man of the match performances in a row. He's just, and I like him at 7, I have to say as well. I really do.
Well, he might get a bit of game time there, seeing as though Mr. O'Brien is out
He's
for.
likely to be out for a couple of months. We may not see him again this season,
Well, I saw a report
or
on.
indeed ever.
I saw I saw a report on the ERC website today, and it said they might be back for the knockout stages of the.
The operation
be
was
April.
more serious than initially. It was going to be a keyhole job, and it wasn't. It was open surgery, so it's a bit more serious than was initially hoped for. Lovely hands here from Luke. Look at that.
Yeah.
And if you watch, he's planned how he's taking these challenges. So he gets his feet in the air as well, which is very important. That's what John Lacey was looking for, to make sure his feet weren't in touch.
He stayed in well.
Yeah.
You can tell by watching him play that he's got a great attitude. It's something about the way he carries himself that you just know he's there for he's a never say die kind of a vibe to him. I think that's probably why he's captain. So up through the
he just doesn't take a step back, does he?
He doesn't. He's very, and it's not. I've never. I don't know the guy personally or anything, but just from watching him play, he just seems to have this aura about him that he's going to go high in the game, whether it's at 6, 7, or 8.
But once again, it's just this conveyor belt of talent that seems to be produced by Leinster in the back row.
Well, I think that's true and going to work against us, because
we'll have to give some of them up somewhere.
Some of them have to go, and I think the IRFU are thinking that skim the cream off the top rather than take the buttermilk out the bottom. I think that's what they're thinking is, because well, obviously they'll save money, and to a certain extent that's good fiscal responsibility, but they're looking at the guys coming through. They're looking at the Geordie Murphys, the Dominic Ryans, even behind that the Gilsonans, the Levys, and they're thinking, it might hurt Leinster a little bit in the short term to get, if these guys are let go, but it'll pay dividends for Ireland, because you've got an extra 2 guys playing top level.
Well, who knows is the answer to that. Let's not get too carried away with speculating.
Exactly.
If we don't lose Heaslip and O'Brien, or Heaslip or O'Brien, or whatever way it works, we're going to have to lose either somebody then from the middle tier, which is the Geordie Murphy, Dominic Ryan, Rhys Ruddock tier, or else we're going to have to let some of the academy guys walk as soon as they finish their academy.
You're missing McLaughlin in there as well. Jennings in there.
I didn't even mention either of them, but because I kind of see them as the top 4 historically.
The team is the squad is very heavy on back rows. It's unbalanced in terms of the amount of I think
you've also got guys like Marshall who hasn't played hardly this year. Phenomenal player.
It's actually in terms of that, it is imbalanced. There are 8 or 9 back rows in the squad. That's an awful lot to be carrying, because you can't. I mean, you're not going to get games.
And another 4 in the academy.
Yeah, but also you're talking about, maybe letting some of the senior guys go. These guys also might be looking to move. I'm sure they're ambitious young men, and I'm sure that they want to play games for a professional rugby team.
Yeah, well,
regardless of whether I'm sure they'd like to stay with Leinster, but if that's not happening for them.
Well, you see Rhys Ruddock has kind of broken through now, and whether it's an injury or a niggle that McLaughlin has, or whether it's just that he's pushed his way to the front, He's getting the games now. Jordy Murphy's benefiting from Sean O'Brien being out, and could be the making of him.
Because we've so many Irish players in the back row, it's one area that's always been open to open competition.
Yeah.
I mean, the guys who are there at the moment took their positions from Irish internationals to a certain extent. I mean, maybe not Kevin McLaughlin because Rocky Allison was there, but Sean O'Brien had to get past Shane Jennings when Jamie first broke into the team. Victor Costello was there, and Eric Miller was there. So there's always been a kind of if young players look at how the guys who are in front of them got there, they will see that if they play better than those guys, they'll get their chance. And that's, I mean, Rhys Ruddock is shown. I mean, Rhys Ruddock's still a very young player. I mean, he's still only 23.
22 or 23.
Yeah, so I mean, the element is there. But just before we move away from Ulster, because I know you want to talk about the Connacht game and show the Connacht try. At the beginning of the season, I tipped Ulster maybe to win a Heineken Cup. I thought that this might be their year. I'm beginning to revise that opinion downwards.
Although they are the only unbeaten team in the Heineken Cup.
Yeah, but they have an awful lot of
naivety in there somewhere.
Well, that's charitable. I was going to say stupidity. They have some of their players. I mean, I was watching them against us, and I was watching them against Munster. Some of their players are dumb as a bag of hammers.
You're not going to mention Dan Toohey again.
I'm going to mention Dan Toohey. A player I always admired, and it was kind of when Ulster were spending big money on South Africans, I was kind of hoping we'd be able to tempt Dan Toohey south.
Yeah.
No thanks. He's just too dumb. He gives away so many stupid penalties in stupid positions for things that he knows are wrong. I mean, also a certain element of Ulster fans were complaining about the way John Toohey refereed the match. John Lacey. John Lacey refereed the match exactly the same way as he refereed the Pro 12 final, and exactly the way as the week before the Pro 12 final we said he was going to referee the match. He hasn't changed. He's very consistent. He's a consistent ref, and yet they were still doing the same stuff. And that's naivety, and you can't be naive at the level I think Ulster want to be at.
And when in that match, they actually brought on practically the full strength team when they brought on Pienaar and Payne.
Yeah, in the back line.
In the back
That's
line.
exactly what I was going to say. Was when I saw the teams announced for that, I was pretty disappointed with Matt O'Connor's selection, and I was amazed that Ulster sent such a strong team, and I thought we were really going to be up against it. And I think my comment was, we must be going to send a great team to Connacht. And pretty much we did. But the team that I wasn't rating so highly against Ulster's top guys, and they were almost the top strength of their fit players. I mean, there was maybe one or two missing. They didn't perform, and we did. We performed pretty well. Whereas in Connacht, you should have beaten them out the door.
Well, on
paper.
And so some guys who were up against vaunted opponents.
So maybe what the point I'm getting around to is maybe Matt O'Connor got it right.
Yeah, maybe he did. Yeah,
he knew that we were going to need it in Connacht.
I was really worried about the centres. Reid and Mackin are talented guys, but they haven't played a whole lot of top level rugby as of yet, and there are still questions about them in terms of their callowness.
Cave and Marshall.
They were up against Marshall and Cave, who are the kind of the heir apparents to the 12 and 13
Cave was
jersey.
anonymous.
Yeah, and they were played out of it. I mean, for whatever reason, whether it was because the ball they were getting was bad ball or whatever, but they didn't get an opportunity. Whereas Reid and Mackin did, and have kind of elevated themselves into a frame, maybe an A-level frame, Ireland A. But and I know there's only one game this year, but at least they've elevated themselves on the national stage.
Yeah,
they're nowhere near international level yet. But
also
neither Marshall and Cave. And looking at that,
when you take a punt like that, put two guys like that against a fairly strong Ulster, and they swim rather than sink.
Well,
it's a great building.
O'Connor kind of went back to his Australian predecessor's time that he played the two talented or international players together in one game, and he played the
Callow guys.
The Callow guys in the other match. Whereas
them up,
exactly, and it worked out, but it could have. It didn't. It almost didn't work out against Connacht when we did have pretty much our strongest 15, or certainly strongest back line out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was very disappointed with that game. I thought that. I mean, we were just rubbish. I mean, we were rubbish.
Well, I was at the game, and I had two very different views of it. When I saw it live, I thought we were really appalling, and the kick in and the whole. I just thought we were desperate. When I saw it back on the telly, I wasn't quite as. I thought we we played a lot smarter in the second half. We still kicking the ball.
Would that be because of the changes to halfback?
Yeah,
Change
I
it.
think that might have something to do with it.
I'm not entirely sure that that's what it was. I think the game probably, the type of game probably fitted with Goppert's game more than it would have with Madigan's game. You know, it was never going to be a free flowing game of rugby. Although different tactics, it probably could have been because the weather was fine apart from the last few minutes when it started raining. The weather was conducive to throw the ball around rugby.
Let's remember, for all the Connacht will always raise their game when Leinster come to town, and for all that they beat Toulouse, you are talking about a team with the second worst record in all of top level rugby in Europe.
Yeah,
The only team that's worse than them is Worcester.
I was about to say it has to be Worcester.
And you know, for a team that has designs on winning both a league or a Heineken Cup, that was a shocking performance. I mean, you can.
But you
can
have
only
to
worry
give
about
credit. You have to give credit to Connacht though as well. I mean,
absolutely,
their young guys are really
really
stood
good.
up. Like
They've talented young guys as well.
We
it has to be
mentioned
said.
Leader Henshaw. I thought it was a fine
Carty,
game.
out of
And
nowhere.
Carty, like I thought when they took him off and they brought Parks on, they
It
kind
was
of
a step
lost.
down,
It was a
yeah.
step down. It was, and like he's definitely, if they want to be.
Marmion, you know, just that back line is bursting with promise. Really,
I think Lamb made a technical error bringing Parks on, and he should have left Carty on because
It's entirely feasible. I thought
was
Jack
going
Carty
well.
had a very good
Yeah,
game,
he
and
was going very
if I were Pat Lam, I'd be starting him at the weekend, and indeed for the remainder of the season.
and they've some decent players in the pack as well. I mean, they've two really good sets of props there, and you know, Jason
And
Harris White is playing pretty well.
and I
this
thought
year.
Clark was
Clark's a great player.
he was just outstanding. Like and I know he was probably playing in a weaker pack, but I thought he was absolutely outstanding.
Yeah, he is. He's very good. So, you know, they have the players now, and I kind of think they've had a crap season so far, admittedly, bar beating Toulouse. But I really think they have the makings of something, and I know we say this every year, but every year they have more of the makings, and it's only a matter of time. Look at Rob Penny's first season, Munster 6th in the league, and now they're kicking everyone's ass. Maybe Pat Lamb's second season.
Problem with Connacht
might be.
Problem with Connacht is if they win games, then they've no excuse for not winning games. I mean, you look at the Connacht team. Like I've said this how many times? I say this every year that Connacht team is a lot better than its performances. I say it every year. I actually think that that's a good Connacht team. I think it has been for
Very good, yeah.
for 3 or 4 years, and they've had good players and they've signed good players.
Keenan now as well. He
Yeah.
wasn't even playing. Yeah.
They signed what's his name last year, Dan Parks, the year before last, to convert the 1 point losses, and it didn't really work out. They've signed Jay Keane, they signed Danny Poolman, they signed Clark. They have Nathan White, they have Brett Wilkinson, and they've all those young guys. They've Tiernan O'Halloran, who's kind of the forgotten man of that kind of young talent that's coming through. They've Griffin, they've McKeown, they've Marmion, they've Leader,
Henshaw.
they've Henshaw, they've
Now
Dave
Carty.
McSherry.
Sorry, yeah.
Jack Carty. Now to add to that, I mean, that team should not be bottom of the league. So why is it? And why is it constantly bottom of the league?
Well, you know, if Munster can improve 6 places, and last year maybe Connacht can too.
Well, as you said, they've a new coach, and I'm sure
Bit of betting in
we
there,
see
yeah.
our new coach, and he's got the choice of some of the best players in the world to pick from, and we haven't really hit our straps, but we'll come to that shortly. And let's just talk about, like, we looked out with a try that looked like it might have been a forward pass. Sure, we'll have a look at it here.
It's caused a certain amount of controversy this week.
Yeah. Clear and obvious. I think they were the words that reasons we didn't get it.
They're the protocol words. You have to say that. I think TG Cahir had to blame personally.
Well, I actually think that
it's
it's the ground itself, because it's not very high vantage point, so all the cameras are quite a low level.
Normally, you'd see in that position, you'd see touchline. There'd be a guy with a free roaming camera in and around the 22, trying to keep parallel with the ball. And he's there. There was no free roaming cameras on the ground there today. You can see it because they're all fixed point angles. But
there was actually a guy walking around with a camera, believe it or not.
But he wasn't in the right place.
Certainly not.
And the thing is, I mean, to you and me, it certainly looks. But you see, and then from that angle, it doesn't.
It doesn't.
And you see, that's the problem. The TMO has to. It has to be a clear and obvious forward pass. Not even the ball. Remember, people are saying the ball obviously went forward, and there's
Let's not get into all that.
But people have to understand. I mean, there's 4 questions to that.
minefield.
Yeah, and so what? whether the ball goes forward is irrelevant. It's irrelevant to the laws of rugby. It's whether the pass goes forward, whether the pass is forward. And
I
the TMO couldn't
I heard an
decide.
interesting observation by Jim Glennon on the radio the other day.
It's first time for everything.
But he mentioned the fact that, like, obviously the TMO is a great thing that rugby has compared to other sports, but the fact that he brought up that because it's so public and it's on the TV, he said, in his opinion, he thought that the TMO is reluctant to overrule a decision made by the referee, especially the way that the question is framed. You know, like if he had said try yes or no, might have given him an opportunity to say no as a forward pass, but the way, as you said, clear and obvious.
But that's the word.
And the other famous one is give me a reason I can't award the try.
For forward passes, you have to ask, is it clear and obvious? I mean, even if he doesn't ask, if it's a try yes or no, the TMO will still be looking for a clear and obvious forward pass. So whether you ask him or not, it's either there or it's not. So it wouldn't have made any difference. The problem is that, you know, the TMO just wasn't able to see clearly and obviously.
The best we can say about that try is
a look forward.
It's inconclusive.
Yeah. Video evidence is inconclusive.
Yeah. So it probably quacked like a duck and walked like a duck, but we can't conclusively say.
But it has highlighted for me. The one thing that annoys me is people say things and take them as shibboleths in terms of the laws of the game, and they're not. You know, the ball clearly went forward. That's what people are saying.
Yeah.
And so what?
But the ball pretty much
Goes
always
forward in every
if
pass.
somebody's
Yeah.
moving.
So I mean, I mean, to a certain extent, that's the game's fault that they haven't educated supporters enough. So I don't know. Just get someone in tits.
Well, anyway, it got us out of jail, and it gave us our second win.
We could have also. We were pretty lucky with the Jamie Heaslip call. I thought he was going to walk. Having watched it a good few times now.
He
Dan
didn't think
Parks
to wrap his arms around it all, did he?
No, he didn't.
made a little bit out of it.
But then you have to look. What's the standard of proof for a yellow card in an Irish Interpro? Is what he did worse than kicking somebody in the head? No, it's not.
we've
So
gone there,
therefore, it's not. Well, that's the standard of proof. We've seen it. Therefore, it's not a yellow card and it's not a sighting.
Okay.
I remember Brian O'Driscoll stamping on someone down in Thomond Park before they redeveloped it, I think in about 06 or 07, and he got away with it as well.
It's not worse than kicking somebody in the head.
Were we allowed play in Thomond Park in 06
That
or
was
07?
one of the few times.
Yeah, it was Christmas, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think it was Ian Dowling, but anyway, you can stand on Ian Dowling while you like.
it's fair play.
Thanks.
So that leaves us on. Brings us up to second place, 3 points behind Munster, just 1 point ahead of the Ospreys, and 2 further ahead of Ulster. So we've still got a home quarter final if we're
Thrilled to bits with that position in the league at this stage. Absolutely.
well. That's what I wanted to sort of lead that into. Like we're pretty much close to halfway into the season now, so I just want to kind of do a quick half-term report for O'Connor and Leinster. Like it's just.
Can do better.
Can do better, but we've just had so many mixed bags performances. You know, we had a couple of great shows against Saints, obviously over in Northampton. Even the Ospreys game in Swansea in the Heineken Cup.
Clearly in the
we
opening game
opened
of
up
the season.
exactly, and then we've had some pretty poor lows as well. Obviously, the Edinburgh defeat, the
Glasgow,
Yeah,
the game down in Thomond Park because we just didn't perform.
Yeah.
And obviously the game against Saints in Diviva as well.
What I would hope is that to a certain extent what we're seeing is it is kind of a parallel of what happened last year. Obviously without the bad injuries that we had last year in terms of the key positions. But what we're seeing is that the team is only going to come into form after Christmas. That it's building and building and building, and then after Christmas, because by the time we got into the knockouts in what was ultimately our Amlin campaign, we were flying. We would have beaten anyone in Europe.
But Dave, you were saying about the injuries. Like we've got 2 very important fellas out injured at the moment, and O'Brien hasn't played a whole lot of matches this season prior to getting his bad injury.
But it's not a position where...
And Healy, well, I just think I'm talking more about ball carriers. Like
well, they're two guys, and everybody's saying it. It's they're 2 guys you just don't want to be missing, and you can't play that physical game without some physical guys. You've got Mike McCarthy, fairly physical. You've got you've got a few players still there, Cronin, Heaslip, but they're not at the level of physicality that, and Ruddock, of course, Geordie Murphy. There are players, but they're not at that absolute freakish level of physicality that Healy and O'Brien are at. And when we played all our best matches in the Heineken Cup, we probably had at least one, if not both of those. And they're hard to resist because you've got to put 2 players on each one of them
Yeah.
to try and stop them.
Like you think back to
And the holes that creates with somebody like Redden spraying the ball around out of rucks, and those 2 guys, it's very hard to resist.
But
Like,
you, I was
it's
just
a matter
thinking-
of if you know what's
but you
coming.
think back to the final against Ulster in the Heineken Cup final, like those 2 lads just blitzed them apart.
Yeah.
But the other side of that is, of all the guys that we have, of all our key guys, they're the 2 key guys that we could most afford to miss. In terms of because last year we were missing guys, right, and we didn't have anything underneath them. I mean, we ended up having playing Ian
I know what
Madigan
you're
at fullback
saying.
and stuff. Whereas at least
We've got good cover.
we've got not just good cover now. In fairness to like how Jack McGrath's gone this season, and how Jordy Murphy's gone over
But
the last
still,
couple
it's
of
his
games.
breakthrough season, though, Dave. You know.
Oh, I
and,
know.
Like
But
he's not Keane Healy.
oh
yet.
no, he's not. No.
And
Nobody is.
And
And
Geordie
Wiley
Murphy isn't
No.
Sean O'Brien yet.
Well, both of them have had fantastic games for Leinster this season and have played way above what they played before. And in many ways, Jack McGrath isn't that much of a step down from Cian Healy, but
He doesn't have that
overall,
explosive power.
exactly. And you might say he might be a better scrummager, even. You know,
I think he's technically a better technical scrummager than Keane. But again,
But-
Keane gets up because you're a loose head. You can get away with it a whole lot just by applying power.
Well, I think he actually admitted that Cian Healy's the best prop in the world at the moment. So.
I certainly thought he was at that point. At the
That's-
point when the Lions tour started, before he got injured, I thought he was the best prop in the world.
that's where I'm coming from. Like, it's when you've got the best prop in the world, as you're saying, and Sean O'Brien, one of the best back rows
Probably
on
one
the
of the
planet.
few Irish players that we get on the All Blacks team.
Exactly. So when you've got those 2 guys, no matter how good Geordie Murphy and Jack McGrath are, and they're phenomenal, they're not Cian Healy and Sean O'Brien.
No, but the point I'm making in comparison to last year is last year we were missing guys and didn't have an ant.
Well, you think
them.
we had to play
Yeah.
Goodman in the Aviva Stadium against Clermont,
and
you
that's
know?
that's the big difference we have this season. Okay, I absolutely accept your point, and I do think that those 2 guys are actually the 2 best players in Irish rugby right now. But
you go from being a Heineken Cup winning team to being
an Amlin Cup winning team.
well. Let's hope not.
But no, but what I'm saying is that at least we have guys underneath them that we didn't have last year.
Yeah.
And then I mean Keane's going to be back soon.
Yeah,
Well, not soon, but
6 Nations.
yeah, he'll be back for the Six Nations. So I mean, I don't think Sean will be back much for the end of the season. And then there's other guys to come in as well. Richard Strauss is back in contact training. Yeah, you can see him in.
Yeah.
He's back in contact training this week. Now whether he'll be back this year because he's drugs to clear out of his system and all this kind of stuff, I don't know.
You know, this year compared to last year, like we were the second highest try scorers in the league. We've got 6 bonus points, which was our kind of a downfall last season, and we went on a 5-game winning run during the autumn internationals with a couple of matches in the Heineken Cup and then a couple of matches in the Pro 12. So we've fits and starts, but when we're poor, we are poor, and when we play well, we can really blitz it like we did.
I think positionally, in terms of tables and in competitions, obviously we're better than we were doing last year.
Yeah. We've a better shot at staying in the Heineken Cup. Anyway,
Oh,
for
yeah.
sure.
But I'm still not confident about how we're playing. I mean, last year you could say that we were in the position we were in because of injuries and whatever, but you knew that what was
We've
good.
been okay with injuries this season.
This year we've been okay with injuries, and we're playing. We're not playing great stuff on occasion. I mean, let's be honest. In terms of our performances this season, the game against Northampton has been the blip.
It was funny when I was looking back over the match that we were going to talk about. We talk about the Cast game in the Heineken, but it just leads me into it. When we played Cast 5 years ago, in just a couple of in the pool stages prior to us winning our first Heineken Cup, there's 8 players of the starting 15 from that Cast game have left the club completely.
I'm sure that was Johnny Sexton's last game for Leinster.
Nearly was, alright.
It was.
In some ways, that's not. Is there not more?
Yeah, well, if you take there was only 22 at the time.
It is 5 years ago, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but there's 14
Four.
of the 14 of
Fine.
14 of the 22 are gone.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
It is to a certain extent a big turnover, but it's something we discussed before. That I mean, the turnover has been managed. Again, a lot of the guys there were guys who were at maybe not at the peak, but were just slightly over the peak. I mean, Gervin Dempsey played that day, unless I'm mistaken. He's
Scored a
gone.
try.
Malcolm O'Kelly's gone.
Rocky.
Never reached those levels again after he left Leinster. So there are guys who were there. Felipe is gone.
Chris Whittaker.
Whits is
Jackman.
gone.
Jackson.
Jackman. Johnny Sexton has left, unfortunately. So there were a lot of guys, leaving Sexton aside. I mean, Felipe was kind of right at the peak of his powers at that time and just about to slip over maybe a bit. Same with Mal, same with Burke, same with all those guys, actually. So we were kind of on the cusp of it. Whether we won the Heineken Cup or not, the next season that team was going to have to change.
Yeah.
And it did.
And it did.
Yeah, so anyway, obviously we're playing Cast, but I think they might owe us one.
My analysis is that if we get a losing bonus point over there, we can actually still top the group with a win. We're ahead of.
Well, we're 4 points ahead of Saints, and we're 5 points ahead of Cast.
Well, if we get a losing bonus point against Cast, we're ahead of them on the head-to-head. We're already ahead of Saints on the head-to-head, which means that either of those sides would have to have more points than us at the end.
My only concern is that in round 6, the following week, Cast are third in the top 14.
To play each other.
And Cast are they play Stade Francais, which are second, and they're playing them the following week. So I really think they're going to put out their seconds.
Well, I'd hope
against.
Well, if
Saints.
they lose to us, they definitely.
Yeah, well, I'd hope that we'd put that we'd make that decision for them. I mean, we can't worry about what they do in the next match. We have to worry about
if it went down John's road,
I was just looking at the worst case scenario. I mean, let's.
We have to focus on beating them.
Let's win this.
If we beat them, that gives us one home game. That all we have to do is win. We don't even have to win, to guarantee that we qualify for the quarterfinals. So this game is actually the important game. Yeah. If we win this game,
of course,
everything's in our own hands. We don't have to worry about anyone else. We don't have to be sweating there with our phones and Jason going, "What's that kind of smartphone type thing you have there? Is that some kind of Star Trek communicator?" Trying to work out how to get the interwebs on what turns out to be a
sandwich toaster.
Yeah, a sandwich toaster that he's brought to the game by mistake and wondering why he's got hot here. Beat Castra. It's in our own hands. All we have to do is look what's on the pitch and win. Yeah. So forget the week after. Forget round 6. It's all about round 5.
Was it 10-9 that Ulster won last year in Cast? Yeah, we'll take that.
But they looked. They had periods of the game in the RDS that they looked a better team than us.
They're missing Cockett, which I would say is going to be a massive loss.
Well, so just to revisit that point,
he was the danger man.
There was a good 20 minutes when they looked a better team than us.
Yeah.
There was the other 60 we looked a better team.
There was, but they played 20 of that. They played 20 of those 60 minutes without
two of their players.
Yeah.
So
they had a disallowed. Wannenberg had a disallowed try.
Yeah.
They're not going to be a pushover over there.
Oh, they're not. They're no pushover.
And I remember being down there 5 years ago, and we scored 2 tries and still came out on the.
And they were out at the time, if you recall. They were out of the competition at the time.
They were, I think that's that wasn't that the match that Neil Francis brought the Lady Boys tag out after.
I think he brought it out well before that.
Well,
no, he brought it. He made it his big Tribune headline. I remember that.
Yeah.
And Leinster's. Remember, we used it in Blood, Sweat and Beers. Leinster's Lady Boys are now out of the Heineken Cup.
Well, we basically were going into rucks with the ball and coming out, those big Capo Ortega and all those guys were coming at us, and we weren't up for it.
It was a bitterly cold night as well. But
having said that, in terms of the game itself, selections. Probably there's quite a few options you could.
Yeah, you also have to remember. Just one more point to remember is that Leinster team was still a team that was racked by self-doubt. It was a team that had achieved precisely nothing. It had won the Pro 12 the year before, but it hadn't actually won the Heineken Cup. We've won 3 of them since. So there is.
That shouldn't be an issue, all right.
So there is that kind of thing, like when they kept coming back at us in Castra back then. No, sorry, back in over there. The last time we were over there, you could see the doubts creep in and kind of the team fall apart. That's not something that's going to happen now. If Castra aren't going to be able to play on our fragile mind state, they're going to have to actually beat us in a rugby match. So there's that's an element in our favour that wasn't there previously.
Interesting, John. You brought up selection.
Yeah,
I think that between Madigan and Gottberg, neither of them are staking a claim, and one is only getting in because the other one's poor performance the week before So it's almost
It's not a good way
they're
to
getting
be.
selected by
they're
default.
they're both staking anti-claims.
Yeah.
Well, no, Madigan, I think, was let down by the game plan. Let down is the wrong word, but the game plan didn't suit him.
Well, he didn't implement it out very well. He missed touches from
Exactly.
penalties. He kicked the
Well,
ball way too far.
That's shocking. Missing, they've both done it.
They both
this
did
season.
it. Goppert did it the week before.
Like, even if you only got 10 yards,
Yeah.
get it in the bloody touch.
Like at one stage, Rob Carney actually took over
That's
kicking
right, yeah,
down the
kicked
line.
to them, yeah. Well, he can do it again this week, as far as I'm concerned. But I think we're going to have to. They have a big pack. They're missing Cockett.
Who was super for them?
Who
in
was
that
super
match.
for them. So what I think we're going to have to do, okay, if the opportunity presents itself to play rugby and throw the ball around at any point in the game, you're going to take it. You're going to play heads up. But I think our main tactic is going to have to be controlling the game and kicking the corners and playing 10-man rugby to some degree and relying on our defence.
How certain are we that we're good that Cockett is actually going to be missing?
I read today that he was out. Yeah.
They expect him to be out because he's got a sprained thumb. Now whether he is actually out or not is another thing. He missed last week, all right.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
He might mysteriously appear.
I'd expect Castro to have a very strong team. I expect Cockett to play. Now whether he does or not is another matter. But
Well, personally, I go Boss and Goppert just for that physical defensive thing from Boss and the control in the game. I mean, from day one, it's what Goppert was brought in to do. Lockout games, control games. It's his. And if you can move that big cast pack around a bit and get it on the back foot and get it having to trudge up and down the field a lot. The field, somebody was saying that the pitch is not particularly big pitch either. That it's there's not a lot of width in it to be throwing the ball around. So you've got to try and control the game rather than we don't have to go for broke either. We need a 1 point win. So I see it being a very defensive kind of a game, and maybe putting a big pack out as well.
Even if we break ourselves into pieces trying to score a bonus point and do get 2 bonus point wins, I mean the odds of us getting a home quarter final are
very low,
marginal.
Yeah.
So we better secure
a
the
lot
win
of results
first of
need
all.
to go. I think 2 groups have to go in our favour, really.
Yeah, we need to secure the win first of all.
Yeah, we'll rattle through the.
We
other
need
groups.
Munster to lose to Gloucester and Claremont to lose to Harlequins.
Yeah.
I would think
Yeah.
to have any chance of a home quarter. But anyway.
Well, why don't we talk about the Munster pool? Like they play Gloucester, as you said. Momentum certainly is with Munster at the moment. Like they've got a couple of last minute tries.
Pulled a couple out of the bag. Yeah, and one of those tries, the tries against Perpignan, is the one that's going to take away our home quarter final. For all the people who were cheering when they scored it, well done, lads. That's the thing. I mean, Gloucester will put it up to them. They won't, because English teams don't. English teams don't fade.
Well, it was for one of the few times that I've ever seen an English team almost throw the towel in before the game was in that the corresponding fixture in Thomond, where Nigel Davis sent out pretty much a second.
Selectorially, they threw in the towel, but the players themselves.
No, absolutely, they didn't. Yeah.
And that's gonna. I expect it to be the same this weekend, but 70 minutes into the match, when Munster, you might be a point or two ahead, or even just a point or two behind. Munster are pounding at you, and you've got nothing to play for. That's when the subconscious doubts creep into the minds of the Gloucester players. So I expect it to be tight for 70 minutes, and then Munster to go away and win by 10. I don't think there'll be a bonus point either way, but I expect Munster by 10.
I'd expect Munster to win it for sure.
Yeah.
It depends what out half they go for. If they go for JJ,
I don't think it matters which out half they have. I mean,
they'll win it anyway.
I mean, JJ is he's not the Messiah. He's not a naughty boy either. But I mean, he's still quite callow. I mean, have been questions raised all season about his ability to control matches.
But he does have the X factor.
He has the X factor. He has the X factor like Madigan had it, for example.
But he has the confidence as well.
Oh, yeah,
whereas Keatley's confidence has to be dented after his performance up in Radio.
One of the most stupid things I've ever seen was him kicking that ball
out of 8 or something.
Yeah, well, kicking that ball into touch in the end.
Minute,
But at the end of the day, I don't think it matters which one they play, because if they play Keatley, they'll probably get a more controlled, rounded game. If they play Hanrahan, they'll probably get more individual brilliance, which Munster people generally don't trust. So I don't think it matters either way. I think it's going to be one of those games where it'll be.
Some people can't handle luxury, Dave.
Yeah, yeah. But it's going to be one of those games where it'll be tight for 70 minutes, and then Munster will pull away, and it'll be 10, 12 points in it at the end.
Well, I wish I could predict it to that degree, but
Having said that, it'll probably be a 2 bonus point try fest. But just looking at the teams, looking at the attitude of English teams, and with the fact that despite that attitude, they don't have anything to play for. That attitude will only take you so far. There's a reason why Munster are top of the group and why they aren't, because Munster are a better team than them as well. So,
do you think Conor O'Shea's Harlequins can stick it to ASM? Claremont Auvergne.
Where is the game?
In the Stoop.
Then I think they can, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that'll be.
I don't think they will, but I think they can.
Well, they've got the momentum going for them now. They they lost their opening couple of games. They've won their last 2. They hockeyed Racing Metro. I think, and they have something to play for now as well.
Claremont, you see, can be got at. I mean, we know this. It's just a matter of what point in the season they expose it. And they exposed it against Racing Metro.
Well, they were already beaten.
Racing beat them.
And Racing are no great shakes.
Quins are a very good side. I mean, they're not going to win the Heineken Cup. They're not at that level yet. Claremont could win the Heineken Cup, but Quins could still beat Claremont.
Quins have a good day and Claremont have a bad day.
You know how French players French teams can get very frustrated, particularly in England. If things
against
don't
the roast beefs.
Against the roast beef, if things don't go their way, they do get very frustrated very quickly and start doing really stupid things. Discipline goes to pot. That could well happen. Claremont have been there have seen it all and done it all before. That's the only thing. They have the experience that a lot of French teams don't have.
And they also have a few very hard fellas that aren't
French. Yeah.
Primarily their second rows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And some of their wingers and their full back, so.
But there is still an attitude. I mean, they've had all those players and they still managed to fucking collapse in on themselves in the Heineken Cup final last year.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah. So, one big game is Toulouse Saris.
That's the game of the weekend, really.
It's Fortin top 14 versus first in the Viva Premiership, and both teams are on 15 points. So
I want both teams to lose.
Yeah, well, a draw would actually suit Connacht because they've got Zebra, so and they've got them at home. So
a draw mightn't be mightn't be entirely out of bounds in this game. I'd say Toulouse will win, but I saw the first game, the game in Wembley, and two less imaginative teams. It would not be possible to imagine. Funnily enough, it was dire stuff. It really was. Toulouse will win because Toulouse are just slightly better than Saracens. And that's about it.
Yeah.
I'd probably put my money on Toulouse, but they can't play as badly as they did against Connacht, surely. They are having a fairly crap season by their own high standards. So they're not the Toulouse we would have known.
Of course, if there's a draw in that game and Connacht get a bonus point, Connacht still qualify?
I haven't done the maths on that.
One more game to go. We did obviously touch on the O'Gara.
I never touched O'Gara.
He wouldn't let you, Dave.
No.
For any reason.
But we did touch on his
catch him.
on his DVD, and he mentioned, one of the things that he mentioned I thought was very interesting was his relationship with Declan Kidney, and he basically said that he was a good man manager, but really had no influence in the tactics, and I just can't understand how your number 10 can say that about your coach. Surely he's the guy who's going to implement every single tactic.
I remember a lot of that stuff was recorded at the time.
Yeah.
And apparently some of the stuff that ended up, I was talking to a documentary maker today, and some of the stuff that ended up on the cutting room floor was even worse. But anyway,
I'm sure it was. That's why it ended up there.
Yeah, but I don't. Is it a big secret that O'Gara didn't have a high opinion of Kidney even when he was Munster coach? I don't think it is.
Really?
I wouldn't have known it.
I certainly don't. I seem to remember. I certainly picked it up talking to people I know from down there that O'Gara kind of didn't really think all that much of Kidney, like you said in the documentary, because O'Gara's not exactly one to hide his. I mean, he's always honest. One thing you say about O'Gara when he talks, he's always honest, and I don't think he's ever hid the fact that he doesn't have a huge amount of time for Declan Kidney.
I thought that was a great thing about the documentary was that he was honest, and he was, you could see he was very emotional. What I was struck by really was and you see it with a lot of fellas like Roy Keane, players who winning is, that's grand, and losing is, oh my God, that's, it's disaster.
Yeah.
It's, absolute despair.
They just don't seem to take any enjoyment from their sport.
They win because But that's what makes them so good.
I know.
If they went around going, yeah, we just won, they would not get themselves up the next week.
But it must be a very hermit-like lifestyle that those lads live. I mean, I'm not talking about going on the lash after every match, but even when we won the Hinding Cup the first time, like the guys, they played over in Edinburgh, they came home, whatever it was, the 6 or 7 of them that were picked for the Lions all flew out the next day.
Right, yeah.
They didn't have 1 second to enjoy their one of the ultimate achievements of their career.
A lot of them have no interest in enjoying it because, you see, I mean, you look, say, after we beat Munster in 2009, O'Driscoll had no interest in the match that was just over.
Yeah.
His entire focus had switched. Now, never mind that it was the great point of redemption for almost everyone connected with Leinster. For him, it was just, right, that game's over. On to the next one. And O'Gara was the same.
But that's fair enough. That's semi-final. But the final, like you reach a pinnacle
I think O'Gara has enjoyed finals. I've seen him lepping around the place, and like after finals. But it's like for Millennium Stadium.
But it's for 2 hours, and then it's.
If that. But what it feeds into for me, and where I was going with that point as well, is that we've talked a couple of times before about how a team are only as good as their last game, and the other side of it is it gives your next game is a chance for redemption if you lose, or your next game is you're back to square one. You've got to prove it all again, because we come in here and analyse Leinster, let's say after the Northampton game, the first one, and we go, they're God, yes, it's wonderful, and the next week they're muck. It's the same 15, 23 guys. They haven't gone from being God to being muck in a year, but that's the nature of sport. It's so cyclical, and there's always another match next week, and no matter what you win, there's always another season, and no matter what happens, there's always. So if you're going to be on top of your game for a number of seasons like O'Gara was, you're just going to have to be bitter, or you're not bitter, but you're going to have to you hear them say, I look back on my career when it's over. I'm not going to get all into the emotion of that win now. I'll look back on it with pride when I retire. There's no real other way to be. Otherwise, you just get carried away with yourself, and you get your ass kicked every second game because you'd be on such a high.
Again, that's not nothing we didn't. That's not anything that we didn't know about O'Gara before.
Of course not.
What a lot of people won't have known about O'Gara is how unguarded he has been, how unguarded he can be. I mean, he was giving those interviews at a time when he was still playing.
Oh yeah.
Now, obviously, the plan was not to release it until he'd finished, but still, saying that those kind of things on a mechanical recording device while you're still active and still playing with those guys can be dangerous. But the thing is, that's always been the way about O'Gara, and to a certain extent, well, sometimes you'd wish he'd shut up.
It's great though, because nobody else comes out with
that's my point. In an era where, and I certainly know it, that organisations control what comes out of them and comes out of their players' mouths so strictly that almost every word is chosen in advance. It's nice to see somebody who's actually speaking from the heart and from the head.
Lives in the moment.
And let's be honest, for O'Gara as a Leinster fan, occasionally threw his arse. But it's stuff he means.
Well, I remember him.
It's all anatomical.
I remember him giving an interview on Sky after he kicked a 52-metre penalty against Leicester Tigers in Welford Road. And the previous week he'd kind of come out and said a few things. And he just had this, I think it was about an 8 or 10 minute interview, and it was just brilliant. And it was so honest, heartfelt, and it was one of the few times, that you look at a sportsman and you go, God, fair play to you. Because most of them go, yeah, it was a great game and fair play to the opposition, and they put it up again, even though you could beat them 40-0.
Yeah.
And they just come out with these platitudes, whereas he was just...
But the other side of that is, for your own sake, I mean, you don't come out and retire from international rugby after a match that you're disappointed not to start in, and then not retire.
Yeah, well,
that's the other side of it. Sometimes you do have to be controlled.
Let retire.
But I don't think O'Gara would be the player he is or the man he is if he was constrained in that way. And he's not so. But it was interesting, and it kind of reinforced something that was in Johnny's book about their relationship, that they actually have a very good relationship. There was one great scene that I actually broke out laughing when it came across, where Roger's taking his kids to school and he's bringing the kids along. He's got the kids in, and he's walking along, and then just 10 paces behind, trudging along like a sulky teen almost, was Johnny Sexton. It was that kind of. There
was a few funny bits.
You could see that there's a genuine warmth between them, which as all would say, and indeed as Johnny has said in his book and as Roger said on the thing, that nobody could have imagined ever
But there's a
existed.
great picture of them, two of them driving to train to a kicking section, and
Yeah.
both in the back of a van. And one guy was looking out the left window, and the
Yeah,
other guy was
with-
looking out the
with
right
the other
window,
team, yeah.
and
Yeah.
neither of them wanted to even look at each other in the eye.
But that's it. I mean, everybody assumes always that everybody who plays on a team is great mates. You know, that all the teams, they're all great pals. Now, they might have a huge amount of respect for, but not everybody on the team is great pals. I mean, everybody thinks, for example, that Peter Stringer and Ronan O'Gara are great mates. They're not really. They have no social interaction whatsoever. They're just guys who are a great partnership. And that's always the way it is in teams. I mean, there's guys on teams that we've all played with who we really wouldn't care if we didn't see outside of training.
Yeah.
But when you're on the team with them, you do everything you can for them,
Natural
kind
in
of
all
thing.
walks of life. I mean,
Yeah.
in your job as well. Like there are people that you might like them,
But there's
but
this-
Or panels.
you,
Yeah.
exactly. You wouldn't go to the pub with them.
I'm the only
Again.
non-J in the village. But there is this element that people always assume that everything within a team is harmonious, especially if a team's a good team, like Munster team was, like the Ireland team was. That everybody's Ireland.
The opposite is
and
quite
they're all-
normally true.
And the opposite is normally
Friction is what
yeah.
creates some of the great stuff.
Some guys just can't stand the sight of one another. Some guys don't care about one another, and some guys are great pals. It's the same as it is in life, and it's interesting to see that that relationships change over time, because you could certainly say O'Gara and Sexton did not care for one another at all,
No.
and now they're living in one another's pockets and they're best mates. These things happen.
Yeah. Well, thanks very much for watching, and if you're traveling over to Cast, enjoy. Cheers.